ready to go?
I'll give you.
Oh, thank you.
All right.
Do it.
It's
Thank you.
Wednesday, September 26th, and I'm calling this meeting of the CRCRC to order. We'll start with roll call.
Alex Robinette.
Jay Van Babel.
Brian Ryder.
Dave Bench.
Tom Farrell.
Very good. Okay, do we have any public comment that needs to be addressed?
Dave, let me
Yeah?
make one comment on that. It's my intent to make a motion to table item number 6. Now, I don't know whether I'll get a second or if it'll pass or whatever, but if it does pass, then I would ask that anybody that wanted to make a comment on item number 6 be allowed to do so under the citizens' comments now.
You are asking that or you're motioning it?
I'm asking our committee to allow that to happen, or you as a
You
chair.
would rather, what you're saying is that I believe we have letters in item 6, and we also have letters here in a public, would actually be item 5, and we would cover that first, or we haven't gotten to public comments yet. So
No.
are you saying you want to do this as a public comment? I guess I don't understand.
Well, when I make a motion
Yeah,
to table the items that are related to item 6,
yes,
which includes some of them in item 5.
all right.
And if that were to pass,
Yeah.
then if somebody wanted to speak on that at that time, they wouldn't be allowed to if the motion to table is allowed.
Well, when it's brought up, Tom, will they not be able to stand up and say, I want to talk about that
They
at
could,
that time?
if procedurally they
quit.
shouldn't, but it doesn't matter, we could do it that way, either way.
And we wouldn't be allowed to talk about it either?
Sure you would.
Oh,
No, if we table it, no.
yeah.
If motion to table is approved, which I don't know if it would be, I don't know if I'll even get a second, but I'm going to make that motion.
Do you have
And, when appropriate.
okay.
And if it were to get a second and pass, then that would be it. It would be tabled and there wouldn't be any further discussion on it. So any of our citizens that wanted to speak on it wouldn't get a chance to at that time.
Is there a reason you would like to table it?
Yeah, and I'll go into that when we do it.
Okay.
I don't think it's.
Okay, so what I think I'm hearing is you're asking, in case you make a motion to table item number 6.
Yes.
But there is somebody here who wishes to express comment on item number 6, that it be done here prior to that because you're going to motion against that.
No, I'm going to motion to table it.
You're going to motion to table,
Yes.
okay? So what you're suggesting is if anybody has any public comment on item 6, this is the time to do it. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying.
All right.
I'm not.
I have no trouble with opening up public comment to include items on item 6 right now and to allow public comment on item number 6, provided that it doesn't get tabled.
That's fine.
So, okay.
If it doesn't get tabled, then it wouldn't matter.
Okay, so, all right. Does anybody have any problem with what Tom is asking? This is not a motion, right? This is a
No,
request.
It's a request.
All right. I do not have any problem with, there's anybody in the audience or the public who wishes to speak with regard to item number 6 right now, on the condition that it could be tabled later on. I'm inviting you to speak.
Oops, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to load this up here. Sandy J. Kumar, 3309 Hawkins Drive. And item number 6 is a discussion-only item, I think.
It's correct.
And so I'm wondering why there cannot be public comment when you are not going to take any action on the
Shanti,
contents.
the only the only time there would not be any discussion is when I make a motion to table that.
Uh-huh.
And if that motion passed,
Okay.
then there wouldn't be any item to have a discussion on. I don't know if it'll pass or not. I hadn't talked to anybody.
Well, I'm, as a private citizen, but who has followed y'all's deliberations, this is all from my attending your meetings, okay? Don't ask me everything, but I have it, and I've read it at the appropriate time. So I was just as concerned and taken by shock that what we told our citizens to, that would be like with your doctor or something, you know, confidential material, I heard through the grapevine that it had been released. I had no idea that it had been. So I was curious to know how, when, which, why, where, you know, kind of things. And I thought that the letter, open letter to the citizens, was a good way to approach this issue. Knowing what I know now, I think it's a good way to, well, it's kind of an apology, I would say. I hope it is, that you guys did your best to hold on to that material, and you had no say in the matter because it went to the highest. And I think I applaud you guys, the city, for trying to hold on to that material. So that's the comment I had. But then there's one more additional item there that came in, I think, that's put into all the email part of it, which I don't know whether y'all are going to discuss that or not, because I think it relates to this item. So I was just wanting to know how that was going to be addressed, because it's all part of that same kernel of that number 6.
If you're speaking about 2 emails, we have 2 emails. If we do discuss item 6, those emails will be discussed.
Are discussing item 6.
And it's only those 2 emails.
I know, but we are discussing item 6 right now, is what she's doing, so. I
Public
think-
comment.
Yeah, so either we need to move up agenda item 6 for time stamping issues and for minutes.
Oh, so I probably spoke out aloud.
No, like they're wanting to bring that
See if
up
I
to you,
understand.
but we are now speaking.
Okay,
on
okay,
item
okay.
6.
Got it. Okay.
And just for
Yeah,
time
yeah, yeah.
stamping,
All right.
minute taking, all these
Okay.
things, we're
Yeah.
now
Okay.
referring to that.
Yeah,
So-
I didn't intend to jump to that, but I
Okay.
was here thinking that y'all are going to talk about that.
And it was confusing, because it
Yeah.
sounded like you could talk, it wasn't clear if it was gonna get tabled, but she could talk beforehand, so
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I thought you were.
I don't want to bust y'all's
Yeah.
plan here, but as a private citizen, I'm curious to know the if, when, what, where, whatever happened, that the citizens of Rollingwood
Yeah.
who expressed their private opinions in a forum that they thought was going to be private didn't. So anyway, y'all take it where you want to. I'm just here to observe, and I just wanted to say what I wanted to say, and I'm not leaving.
Okay.
And
All
Shanti
right.
will come back and get,
Okay. You will, I
I'll be
think,
coming back over
I
the
think,
years and get the
I
notes.
think you will leave satisfied, Shanti.
Okay, that's okay.
Okay?
That's Thank
All
you.
right, okay, so, do we have any additional public comment? No, no one signed up, okay, very good. We'll move along to the consent agenda. I trust everyone's had a chance to study the,
Those for public comment?
I don't think anybody's got a hand up,
Don't see him.
yeah, yeah,
Okay, let's go forward. We got a lot to do.
that's, yeah. Dave's not there, Dave's here, Claire's there. All right.
Oh, that Dave is you?
Yes,
Right, yeah, that Dave is me. So,
he's trying to vote twice.
all right,
You-
okay, so, consent agenda, do I have a motion?
Well, I'd want to know whether on the minutes of the joint meeting on September the 4th, I entered the meeting twice.
Oh.
Is that a pat on the back, or is that a penalty?
Well, no, we just put it there, so we put it like in the present members and that you entered at that time as well as in there, so it's reflected on the record and also.
I'm gonna accept it as discipline that I should not show up late. I move approval of the minutes.
I second.
All right. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes, carry. All right, moving along. Regular agenda, item number
What is
5.
item number 4 on the consent agenda?
I'm sorry?
Item number 4 is the
on the consent
critical root
agenda.
zone
Yeah, the
protection.
critical root zone.
I don't understand why that's there.
It was recommended,
Did we not
by my
officially
esteemed
approve?
colleague several meetings ago, that if we're putting something back on the agenda that has already been approved, but it's just for review, that we can put it in the consent agenda, and it doesn't need any further discussion unless there's some disagreement as to what it was. So I just reposted your document, finalized. That will be the document that gets carried over to P and Z.
Okay. So
Is
did
that what
we
you
vote
want?
on that as well? We
No.
just voted on the minutes, so.
We vote, so what we're saying is, it's fine.
2, 3, and 4.
Yeah, on 2, 3, and 4,
Well,
all of
yeah,
the,
yeah,
everything
my-
that's within those is fine. Don't need to discuss it. Okay?
All right, my motion though was to approve the minutes. Let me make a supplemental motion to approve item 4, so it's clear we did.
Thank you, I missed that.
And I will,
I appreciate that.
I'll second that, I seconded
Okay.
first.
All right, very good, thank you.
Yeah, okay,
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, all opposed?
okay.
Good. Ayes carried. Consent agenda in full is approved. All right, regular agenda, discussion and item number 5. Discussion and possible action on emails and letters to the CRCRC from September 10th, 2024 to September 25th, 2024. I can tell you the first 2 emails had to do with talking about parallel plane and how they may not fit within the context of various lots. And may I compliment Alex on a splendid job of explaining how everything would be okay on, in detail on those particular, including graphics. So,
Color.
yeah, so I don't know that anything else needs to be said about those. The other 2, unless you want to, the other 2 emails have to do with item number 6, and we can take them up with that, should that happen.
Right.
Okay?
So I will.
So if we have nothing else to say about item 5, we'll move along to item number 6.
And I would like to make a motion to table item number 6. And if I get a second, I'll explain why. If not, then we'll just go forward. And,
Explain to us, please, Tom, why you want to, I mean, it's not an action item anyway, but
It's not an action
We'll still
item.
need a second
But-
before you guys vote.
It has to be a second, I think, first, before we can talk about it.
Okay. I'm not getting a second, David. Let's just let the silence be what it is.
Where is?
All right,
That's it?
so take up item 6.
We're up on item number 6 now. Okay.
Would you still like an opportunity to explain?
We will when we,
Okay.
I can't do it without having a motion and a second, and then we will
Gotcha.
go forward, but I will.
Thank you, Tom.
Mine is a fairly easy,
Okay.
mine is just,
Item number 6 is discussion on the unintentional release of survey identities.
well,
Um,
I can do it anytime.
Folks, you can do it now?
Yeah, I'll be glad.
Go ahead, explain yourself. That'd be good.
I'll be glad to. Look, the only reason that I thought that this was, we have one of our residents that is running for city council. And their name was being used in some of the emails that we had. They were not gonna be here tonight. And I just didn't think that was appropriate that we would discuss this without them being here. And that was a single reason that I did not want to do that. I just didn't think, I did not want any appearance that we are dipping into the political pool, which we're not. And I have no worry about that, but there's always appearances, and I just didn't want, and one of the emails actually made a statement to that effect, so I just thought, all right, the appropriate thing to do is to table that until they're here. And this may be our last meeting, and it may never come up, but that's okay. That was the reason that I felt that we should table that.
It feels like your reason is a courtesy.
It is,
correct?
that's
Okay.
sick, when we have people that are
Okay.
willing to spend their time to run for public office,
Okay.
I think you give them every courtessy you can do it.
As I understand it, the story has not been put out in this committee yet, only in the emails. And I think people should at least hear what happened.
I'm not disagreeing with that, Jay, one bit. I think they should. Now, I remember when this first came out, we had some discussion about that at one of our meetings. Now, was I in Never Never Land when
I
that
think-
occurred?
I don't,
Are you talking about the public information request?
Yes.
I don't believe we've discussed it.
we've never discussed this.
We discussed
Okay.
how to address issues that were in the survey, but which were part of that.
We did.
Yeah.
Okay.
What we would do, because after we had gotten the survey results and we had found that there was some language in there that would identify various lots or owners or whatever, that we decided collectively to redact that information. And that's really that's the extent of what our discussion around all that was. Not that anybody was looking for it yet or anything else. Now, I want to just,
And I remember specifically also that Tom had said, he was on the on the Zoom, and you had said we should absolutely redact references to any address.
And maybe that's what I was
and that might be.
trying to remember.
That wasn't mentioned in this letter, but it was definitely something that
I would
we
ask
did.
Dave to just reiterate very briefly what has occurred.
Okay, what had happened was, back in the days before we had created the survey, or while we were creating the survey, we had a lot of discussion about how it was that we were going to keep the results of the survey private. And what we had agreed to is that we would make sure that any identifying information associated with the responses would be kept separate from from the responses themselves.
Now, explain
We-
why. Explain.
The
to me.
reason why we wanted to do that is because we wanted candid responses. We wanted people to be able to tell us what they thought
You and I
without
were
having
on the
any
committee when
repercussions from
discussed
anyone
that.
else. And the other is that we didn't want to embarrass anybody about what it is they said, or have somebody come back and say, hey, you said this, or whatever. So what we wanted was the best quality set of responses that we could get.
Yeah.
Now, being the amateurs that we were, we missed the possibility that someone might be able to discover this later.
And
That's
we-
an unfortunate thing.
And I was part of the committee when we put out the survey with assurances to the public that they would not be identified. Their personal information, including their address, I think, and email or whatever, would not be made public.
The emails are not.
I think that we owe a lot of the quality of our survey responses to that very thing. The assurance that no one would be discovered. Now, once we had recovered the survey, once we had gotten the responses from the survey,
We had to hire a viewing
we
company and
had to
get
hire
council
viewing
approval
and they held all of the data.
for that purpose.
Right.
Yeah.
They
Yep.
So that
released
we wouldn't have.
when,
That's right.
when, and this, I want this to be absolutely clear to anybody who is listening, that when we got the data from Bowie Company, we asked for all of the data that there is except the address information that would enable anybody to identify who the responses were from. You hold on to that. We don't want to know. We don't want anyone else to know. They agreed to do that.
They also were confirming that nobody was filling out more surveys than
The
was
reason,
permissible.
and the reason, yes, and that's also important. The reason why we collected the addressing information to begin with was to ensure that we weren't getting too many responses from the same address. We wanted to maintain at least some control around that, and that worked pretty well. That aspect of it worked well. Now, within a few weeks, well, actually a few days after we had released after the information came to us, and we made a decision in this public forum to redact those pieces of data that might identify something, a public information request went out.
Well, we got council approval as well before that was done. The next night, you went to council and said,
That is right.
we would like to block out the addresses mentioned in the comments, and they agreed.
Thank you
So-
very much for that.
and
You're
Alex,
right.
So we didn't just do it without.
Yes.
No. And when we did that, it's an important part of this, our city attorney was there at that meeting that did that also. So it wasn't like we did it just without counsel on
Yes.
that.
Unfortunately, I guess it didn't come through for us, but we were naively moved forward, thinking that we would be able to maintain this confidentiality. Now, not long after that, a request went in for information.
3 minutes later, actually, there's a timestamp.
Information. Now,
When you
that
sat down.
request, that request was filled, that request was filled a few days later with the redacted information removed. All right? Our staff provided a data set that included all of the data. What we had redacted was removed, and that was it. A second request went out saying, I don't see the addressing information here. I want all of the data, including the addresses. We were floored. I was notified and worked with staff, is there anything we can do about this? Staff said, what we can do is work through our legal and see whether or not we can go to the Attorney General and get a stay on this to prevent that information from being released. I've included their response in the packet. You can see, the intention being that we wanted folks to know we really tried. We did what we could to keep this from happening. Anyway,
I think Buing Company also had letters from an attorney
Yes.
trying to protect the integrity of the addresses.
all
as
hands
well.
were on deck
Yeah.
on this matter.
And really, I think it's just, as it turns out, obviously that information is public, but the intent of this community, and we really are a community, was, the spirit of it was really to protect the community so that people felt comfortable. And it's not like we're a big city, you know, and so I think that the spirit of that protection is what's really
No,
at
Now-
play.
as I understand it, the letter that's in the packet from the Attorney General's office says that you must release.
We must release the data.
So, end of story.
Yeah, that's right.
We did what we could.
Okay, now, the letter,
That was
the
fine.
open letter now, only states facts. This is what happened, we regret that it happened. As far as we know, it's only happened one time. There's only been one request for this data.
Well, but, yeah, I wouldn't go there.
I would.
Well, it doesn't matter. I mean.
Yeah, that's right, I mean, yeah, that's right. The barn door's open.
Yeah,
So-
and I'm not sure that's true. We have, data miners that request information from us all the time. I don't know if they have asked for this or not.
According to our staff, this has been the only request we've gotten.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure of that,
Yeah.
because if I remember right, some of the data miners that I guess they're still doing that. Are they still doing that? Okay.
I'm not 100% sure. I can definitely.
Yeah,
Well, they used to ask for everything
yeah.
that had been asked for.
I think I spoke with Ashley about this about a week ago.
I hope so.
I got an answer that was nobody else has asked for this information. Okay. The addressing information. Okay, so we are where we are. I did reveal in my letter that who the requester was
I
by
don't think we
virtue
need
of
to
that.
discuss it further.
The other thing, I signed the letter CRCRC. I think that everybody here, I did not ask everybody if whether or not it was okay for me to do that. I could have put my name on there. I could have put draft on the top of the letter. But I did want to get it discussed here, and it seemed like the best way to be able to get the information out was to have that discussion in our CRCRC meeting. I don't know another way. I don't have a large data set of people to send it up to.
I think you did a very good discussion of it here, and that's where we got to this point. And I think people listening or watching should look at that letter from the state attorney. It's kind of hard to read it, you know, because there's a lot of legalese, but
Yep.
I assume what it says basically is that information had to be released,
It did.
you know, against our wishes.
And it's important, I think, that the city did oppose the release of that information.
Yes. I think it's also important to recognize that at the bottom of the letter that I had written, it says that we, to this day, do not know or have the information associated with the addresses of these people, of our responses.
That we don't.
We do not. We do not,
That's right.
and we have continued to act
Okay.
without it. There is some suggestion in a letter that came afterwards that others might have the same information. They do not.
Well, the raw survey data is posted on
The
the
raw
city.
survey data is
That's-
posted,
yeah.
and anyone can do whatever they want with it.
People have read it and
Yes,
talked about it,
that's right.
so
And it
it's
has
not a
been
secret.
used. It has been used in arguments
Yeah.
about
So
what we're
it is
talking about.
publicly available.
Sure.
And, I mean, yeah, and I sort of question this, you know, there's a lot of rhetoric about transparency and so forth, and, I mean, I think there's a real disconnect with saying, you know, I think you should be confident and comfortable with, if we're being transparent, that if you've done this, if you've made this request, you should own it, and not, you know, feel like this is somehow gonna discourage other people from making a request. I mean,
Yeah.
that's your right.
Is it,
So-
I'm gonna
yeah.
make a motion that we now table further discussion on this item.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion on tabling the items. Before we get there, this is my,
Well, we have,
I think that we had talked about the possibility of allowing public comment whenever we were on item 6. Before we table this item, I would like to know whether or not there's anybody here who wants to make public comment on this. I'm gonna,
Shanti, we're gonna keep, you know, we'll always know where to go get all
Where
our
to get
notes
hard
on
copy
this.
documents.
I've been,
Because I don't trust the internet. I'm sorry. Shanti J. Kumar, 3309 Park Hills Drive. So when you talk about the comments, is this the list of comments that you had with the packet during the joint meeting? All this
what
long list
the
of,
the redacted
it says-
comments, you mean?
it doesn't have any names. It just has little comments. It says comments pertaining to new construction and code-related issues.
they just didn't have addresses on there.
Yeah, so that's what y'all are,
Yeah.
that's the extent to which you guys,
Yeah,
That's all we've looked at.
yeah.
that's all you've looked at.
Yeah.
Okay, and that was adequate.
Yeah, if you look at, our spreadsheet is this, it has like yes and no answers and, preference for numbers, and then a space there for comments, and those comments, some of them are a little bit, you know, lively.
Yeah,
We got a lot of them. There were 2,200 of them.
There were 2,200 of them, yeah,
wow, so this is just,
yeah.
it's not 1,000 even, okay, you have,
Oh, no,
okay.
yeah, there's a lot of info out there.
Okay, so, I mean, I think I get the picture from just this, okay? And I'm satisfied with it. But it destroys, we're a small community, like Alex said. A lot of people know each other, or they know where something might have come from. You know, people know this stuff because we have lived here. I've lived here 40 years in October. So there was a time in the 80s when people knew the names of the cats and dogs of everybody, whoever had. So people know these things. That's the way of knowing your neighborhood. And it kind of puts a dagger in my heart when I reflect on how one person, doesn't matter who that is, at any given time, can bring our whole, all the hard work that has been done by this committee. And I don't want that to be the the stamp on your committee's work. Y'all have done extraordinarily well, and it has been partly because of the trust we have in you, and I want you to know that that trust continues, regardless of that. I don't want to call it what it is, but it is a bad taste in your mouth when you put out something and the end result is it makes everybody feel so bad that they said things in private that was divulged. I just want to tell y'all, I feel for y'all, and I will do my best to communicate to people that I know of in the community that they need to attend these meetings if they really, really, really want to know how much hard work went into this. It's not just the product of 5 pages of a report. So this should not be held negatively against you all. That's my goal for talking today. And I'm glad I had the opportunity. But please know that people are listening. I will make sure that they know what happened. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
Do you all have, I feel like we should almost email everybody that filled out a survey and let them know. I feel like they have a right to know that it's just something to consider.
Is that just
Maybe send
adding
your
fuel
letter.
to the fire?
Maybe.
It feels like an
That's-
actionable item, and I
Yeah.
don't think we can do that.
Okay.
At least at this juncture. I
Mhm.
think if we decided we were going to have another meeting, we could make it an agenda item to do that,
Yeah.
all right?
Anytime your information is breached by any company, you get a notice that says this has happened. And I don't know, a lot of people probably filled it out with the idea that it could be public and they don't care. But for those that didn't, it does seem like, there's nothing to be done about it, it's out there, but it would maybe if, people could
Yeah.
know.
I don't even know what mechanism you would use to send an email.
Well, you could do it a couple ways, Dave. Number one, the letter we have dated September 20th that you wrote
Yeah,
is part of our public record.
that's
Mhm.
right.
So that's out there.
Yeah.
But if you're gonna do it, the only way to do it, in my opinion, is either a separate mailing to everybody in the
Mhm.
city, because we don't know. I don't know who filled out a survey and who didn't.
Right.
We didn't look.
Well,
Yeah.
Buey and Company would have.
They would have
Yeah.
that, but
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
easy answer is send it out to everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I would suggest that, for right now, we don't have this as an action
Right.
item,
Yeah.
and we do have a motion and a second,
Yep.
We do have a motion in a second.
and let's call the vote.
Well, hold on. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Ayes carried. We'll move on. Thank you. Discussion item number 6.
Seven.
And number 7. I'm stuck on 6 here.
Yeah, we don't do.
Discussion and possible action regarding final CRC additions and/or changes, if any, to residential building heights proposal. Now, before we get into this, last time we met, we had committed to try to finalize this item. We had
Were.
committed to at least try to finalize this item.
I differ, because I do not remember the try part.
I was the movement, and I do remember the tripod.
I was reminded of the try.
In my mind, it was, by God, let's get this finished.
Well, that was definitely what the chair's desire was, but that was not the motion. Could I ask, there's 2 pieces of paper on the table in front of me. Where did these come from?
Me.
Oh, they're both yours? Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to know.
All right. Okay, now, we were gonna try to finalize this item. Now, we also, as you know, we had a draft ordinance written that contained the previously set of recommendations. And that's still out there. That document is still out there. Now, anything, and a couple of things happened after the joint CRC, P&Z, and City Council meeting was we decided that we might take another swing at making any changes based on the conversation we had during that meeting. We attempted to do that in our last CRC meeting, but a key member of our group was missing, and we decided the best thing to do is to ensure that everybody who needed to be present was. So we held that discussion off until this evening, and I think just with that introduction, I'm gonna let that person take this away.
Well, and unfortunately, we're missing Duke, who's another key person. But in the interim, Duke and I have met, and we've also, given a lot of consideration to what came out of that joint meeting, a lot of the different topics that came up. I think that P&Z weighed in some ways that were worth considering with respect to looking at our existing code and, is there a simple, easy way to fix what we already have on the books? And I think that, that's always worth considering. How can we go back and if we're all used to this, what tweaks could we make? And I think that what came out of that is that, tenting is something that everybody seems to agree with, and applying tenting to our existing code is something that I think that we should consider. And kind of the net of what I'm going to tell you tonight is that maybe there really are a couple of options on the table. A lot of the stuff that we've done, and then kind of going back and looking at what can we do with our existing code. And I think that needs to be passed over to P&Z with we can show up and have conversations with them, but let them start to kind of think about how tenting might apply. I have given you a few things that I think also made it into the packet very last minute, but there's different approaches to how we can do this. The way we've been looking at it is along the setback line. So from the 10-foot setback, we would have 25 feet. In this time, I've also met with a couple that has some home plans on Timberline, which is a pretty steeply sloping lot, and everything about it works with the parallel plane. What starts to happen because of the slope on the 10-foot setback, and what they're doing isn't, to me, it doesn't look like it's really trying to push the limits, but it does slope down to the front, and their side setback faces their neighbor's rear setback, and that 10-foot height starts at the back at somewhere around 16 feet, but it ends up at 30 feet just for a portion. But the average is 25 feet for that 10-foot setback. And the portion that is above that is a really small amount. And I've given you this little graphic on the page that says how would tenting work. On the far right, it's this page, there's a graphic from San Rafael, California, that attempts to kind of address that issue, which is to say you limit the percentage. This is just one way you could do it. You limit the percentage of the amount that exceeds the height. In this case, it's like only 25% can go above their maximum height of 18 feet. We could choose to use 20%, or we could choose to add, this 6 inches for every 12 inches of horizontal. So kind of, instead of a foot for a foot, you get half a foot for a foot. So you're kind of cutting that height down by 50%. And you could have further restrictions, like only if your grade change is 10 feet, or if it's a 15% grade change, which this house has. But I don't think that we've fully baked tenting. I think it's still a very, just sort of general idea that hasn't been fully thought through. And I don't think it's necessarily fair to just hand that to council and say good luck. So I think that we need to apply some more information to it, and then I think P and Z can kind of finish that as well, and then get that to council in a more meaningful way.
I don't see concepts of wall articulation in this. Is that gone away, or is that just, is that on the side for the moment and it'll be put back in?
I think we've gone back and forth on wall articulation. The issue, as I see it, and I spent a lot of time looking at different houses in the neighborhood, and it's very hard to come up with a number. Like, is it a 40-foot wall that's 15 feet tall? That, what numbers do you choose before you have articulation? Because that's what some cities do. They say after 25 feet or 40 feet, then you have to have an inset of 3 feet by 10 feet or something along those lines. The issue really is you might have a really beautiful brick wall or stone wall or wood wall or something that isn't very light reflective, and it's not a problem, but it would then be forced to have articulation when it's not necessary. And then the same thing with, like, we looked at window depth. Maybe you use window depth to be part of the articulation. Well, how much window depth? It's like, it gets complicated, and I think that in the spirit of simplicity that we've been talking about, like, we let that one go. It doesn't mean we can't bring it back up, but for now, I think we need to focus on the bigger issue, which is tenting, because I think that addresses a lot of the concerns. And I just want to mention that what the city of Austin does is that they set their spring line on the property line instead of on the setback. And they set it at 15 feet, which is how we ended up where we are. We were sort of simplifying. But if you take a 15-foot pole on your property line and add a 45-foot angle, by the time you get to the 10-foot setback, you're at 25 feet, which is the equivalent of a 2-story house. And then when you get to the 15-foot setback, you're at 30 feet. So it's the same numbers, but it's a different way of measuring. And what's also interesting about that is that the city of Austin also addresses what happens if you have slope. Well, they take a measurement every 40 feet. They set their pole, and so they have sort of a new spring line depending on what that height is at every 40 feet.
That's this third page.
Yeah. And what's good about the property line, as some people have pointed out, is that it's generally unchanged. Like, really very little happens along the property line.
Our side,
Yeah,
Could I ask you to take a step back?
sure.
As I understand, looking at this is a proposal for tenting that will replace the parallel plane. It will take
No.
care of the height restrictions.
No.
This is an addition to the parallel plane.
So there are a couple of options out there. One is taking what we have on already in Rollingwood and applying tenting. The other is parallel plane, where we also apply tenting. So I think tenting is universally accepted.
What we have approved so far, it's in draft form, is parallel plane with tenting, right? We have setbacks. So this scheme would just replace the tenting part of what we've proposed, or would it replace the whole thing? This is starting from scratch.
This is not starting from scratch. This is actually there are some modifications available that I wanted to share with you guys. One of which is, in my mind, and in some other people, that 45-foot angle gets you pretty high pretty quick, and maybe isn't aggressive enough. And if you did 6 and 12, then you're sort of keeping the height lower for longer. So that is what this says. It says you get 6 inches vertical for every 12 inches horizontal when you have slope. And so it changes at the 10-foot setback. We consider dropping it to 24 feet. And then if you add, the 6 inches vertical, horizontal from the tenting side of it, not from the ground side of it. When you get to a 15-foot setback, you're only at 26.5 feet as opposed to 30 feet. So there's just some options. If we feel like the tenting is not sufficient the way we've done it, there's some other things that we could do.
My question about it would be, is the city of Austin uses the property line, and the property line's a fixed item. The way our setbacks work, you have to have 25 feet of setback, and you can move the house around, so you could have 10 on one side, 15 on one side, 12 and a half on one side. And are we better off, whatever tenting we're going to do, going to the property line, which is a known and easily established line?
Yes, I think so.
Instead of this variable line?
I think so.
I mean, I'm all in on the tenting concept, and frankly, I like the 6 to 12 versus the 45 degrees myself, but it just seems to me from a point of certainty and legal certainty, the property line is a better place to go to start from.
Now,
I agree.
now we had, all the comments that I heard, were positive on what we proposed for tenting up to now. At that joint meeting. I didn't hear any negatives on it.
No, but I did hear that it's not fully baked yet. I mean, I think that we hadn't really considered what happens when there's slope.
Yeah.
And how do you address that? So I think that still needed to be done, and when you do that, you have to go back and look at what do other places do. And there's different ways you can approach it. I have something here from Palo Alto, California, this sort of graphic from their code, and they take an average from the property line to the base of the building. Whatever that slope is, they just average it, and then they set their spring line there.
So that would address, I know we've been trying to address the slope lots. That's been something we have heard people's comments on that, and we've been trying to address that in a lot of different ways. Do you think this would address that issue, Alex?
I do. I mean, I think it would certainly help. I think that applying tenting to even our current rules would do a lot to rein in where the impacts occur along the sides. And so I think that we should sort of hand these few options to P&Z. I think that they recognize that it's a challenging and complex topic that
It is.
we haven't really resolved. I mean,
I want to, let me ask one question, and it's been asked to me during, I'm sorry,
I have another one after you.
okay. It's been asked to me during a city council meeting. Are we trying to please everybody, or are we trying to achieve consensus?
is that not kind of the same thing?
No, it's not. No, it's not.
Yeah.
No.
I mean,
It seems to me that we make a decision on a thing, and we fly with that for a while, and then there's some more talk that goes on the outside, say, oh, wait a minute, these people have a lot that does this. And so we need to adjust ourselves to accommodate that. And each one of those changes takes us a lot of time and discussion to get through. Now, I would have been perfectly happy with what we were recommending in April, in that would fly. But now here we are, all the way almost in October, and we're still talking about some of these things, and I really want to get this finished. I don't think that anything that we proposed so far is out of round with anything, and having looked at it in particular in a codified form, it makes pretty good sense to me. I don't think it looks half-baked. I think it looks like it works.
If you could, I thought that I understood our tenting deal, and if you could, if I could understand it, I could not imagine that most people couldn't. I do think that the 612 is something that I believe would help solve some of the issues that we've been trying to help in the future to make sure that doesn't happen.
612 is 45 degrees.
no, it's not.
No.
12
No,
and 12
no,
would
It's
be.
30 degrees.
Yeah.
30 degrees. And then the other thing is, I do like this idea of the Palo Alto option
Yeah.
that we could put in there as an option to let P and Z look at.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not anxious to start over with this, but I think that we pass along the information we have, which is this right here. 612 would be a recommendation I would support, and I think it's gonna take a while to go through this averaging that Palo Alto does, and it may be that this is a successful plan that we could incorporate, P and Z could incorporate. But I think from our standpoint, I think that we can make recommendations onto what we have to let them go forward. That's the way I would envision this working.
My question has to deal with the height limitation. Am I understand that you have three options here, right? Option one, option two, and another form of tenting. And is it that none of these will allow more than 35 feet? It seems that they did it.
One of the things, with a very limited, like this little graphic, which is on the last page with the City of Austin stuff. What happens when you apply tenting is, and I made a note that nothing on the front setback could exceed 35 feet. But on the rear, you could get up to 40 feet within a very narrow window, potentially. We talked about that maybe there's some, in that joint meeting, maybe there's some additional height that's restricted to kind of the middle
Yeah, in the middle
of the lot, or if it's at the rear, where it doesn't impact people.
Well, it does impact people if you live behind the house.
You do,
Yeah.
right.
I
Right.
think that the 35 feet is, by God, just that is
I'm fine with that too.
loud and clear, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm fine with that too. So I just, I don't think anything should be above 35 feet. And I think that if we did consider sticking with current rules, you have to include the foundation. This thing where you have the reference datum and you get all that extra below,
Yeah,
I think
it's
that you need to
natural
measure
grade,
your height
period.
from there. And the thing is, there's just too many examples of that in Rollingwood, old and new and expensive, and all of it that succeeds in doing that. I think that there's some concern about changing our rules to something that's difficult. And on this option 2 page, I finally spoke directly with the City of Westlake, and I said, how do you guys do this graphically with your parallel plane? Can you do it, if you don't have 3D software, can you do it as a 2D? And she goes, oh yeah, all the time. You just take that line along the face of the elevation, you mirror it on every elevation. If anything is above it, you go and look. You drop a virtual plumb line to see what is that grade below. And if it's fine, then it's fine. So you can either choose to do it in 3D or 2D. So I think that does eliminate a lot of the concern about how is this graphically represented? Is it going to be challenging? Is there infinite points? That would still be my recommendation, is if, Nikki felt like this was something she could, kind of all comes down to you. Something that, you felt comfortable with being able to manage and work with Kate Freese on it and stuff like that, so.
You're talking about option number 2?
Option number 2.
Yeah.
And, we did talk about maybe there's a little bit of extra height, because some of these projects I've looked at, there might be just a tiny overlap of roof planes that's a very small portion, that I think we should say that's fine. Like, I think there should be some little area of forgiveness, considering that topography is sometimes also a little bit imperfect. But, and one of the other suggestions is that there's just a different height for flat roofs if you stick with the current rules. I do like the simplicity of parallel plane. still, but I'm just putting this out there to give P and Z a sense that they have been heard and to give them an option to kind of chew on it and
I-
see if they can make it better.
I think that this group needs to make a recommendation as to which option it prefers.
That's fine too.
I'm ready to make one.
Okay.
Okay.
I have to say, before you do that, I mean, I'm just seeing this for the first time. I'm
Mhm.
not an architect, I'm not
Right.
an engineer. I can't really make, you
I
know,
It's
a
tough for me too, Jay.
recommendation based on
Well, I don't think you need
looking at
to
this.
regarding the tenting part. Like, I think that this is sort of just like, we can pass along these options. We can make a
Okay.
decision that they can decide what works best with tenting, but
Who-
But even option 1 and 2,
who-
right?
Okay, you're saying that P and Z will do that?
we can work with them. We can show up
yeah,
at meetings while they discuss it.
It's
but-
fine, yeah, here's the thing, we've been talking about this for a year.
Yeah.
And P and Z has not been talking about it for a year. We probably know every possible permutation of how this could be done.
But is
You
that
know?
their fault?
And to just
or-
say, well, here, you guys decide. I don't think that's what our call was. Our call was to provide a specific recommendation.
And
our call was to send it to P and Z before it goes to council, and
That
P
is
and Z
right.
gets.
With a recommendation.
I'm.
Yeah, but they get to weigh in on this. It's not that
Yeah.
what we say.
You know,
exactly
and-
right.
It's the old, and they do get to do that. They get to weigh in on that whenever it gets to them. Or, and I have spoken with P and Z members about this, they could have come here. They could have watched this sausage being made.
They're watching, Dave.
Okay, that's right. There we go. That's great.
I-
That's great, and I am glad that they are doing that.
Okay.
I'm not sure that that's, to me, just procedurally, I will just tell you, it's always better that when they get to stuff, that if we can't have given them enough to where they can go through it, that they don't have to watch it with us as we go through. I
Yeah.
don't think that's a good way to do it.
I agree.
I'm ready to make a motion if you wanna get a motion and get this done.
Make a motion.
I would take, we have the parallel plane at 35 feet from natural grade is a deal that we have hashed through, and I think this committee has voted on doing. The tinning, I think, is something that we, as part of that, I think is really good that we should do. There's some things that I would suggest. I do believe that we've had enough people comment on the slope issue that if this primary daylight plane polyauto deal, we should send that to P and Z and tell them this is maybe a consideration that they should use. I was prepared to say tonight, before I saw this, that since we've had this, that we go ahead with the parallel plane, and if you have an 18% slope or more, that you can use the data point. And I never could really figure out Jeff's approach, but I could figure out Ryan's approach. So I was gonna take Ryan's approach and say, if you have 18%, you can use either the parallel plane, 35%, or Ryan's approach to to working on slope lots. But motion, I will make a motion that we keep the parallel plane at 35 feet. We give the with tinning, and we make a recommendation to P and Z that they consider the 612 slope and the primary daylight plane
45.
polyauto.
And that we suggest moving the spring line to the property line.
To the property line.
Yeah.
Very good point.
Yeah, like
That's
City of
my
Austin,
motion.
yeah.
And please don't ask me to repeat that. I'm going to.
I don't know. Did you get it, Michaela?
If you would just want to say it one more
Yeah,
time.
don't do that to me.
Just
Yeah.
for the record, just so I can look back at it later.
She's got it.
I
She doesn't
second.
have it. Oh,
We have a second. No, you've got it, don't you?
Well, I was just gonna ask if you could repeat it one more time.
No.
Just,
I couldn't do it if I.
Recommend parallel plane, with tenting, and the tenting, includes examples from Palo Alto. It includes, the 6 and 12 measure, and moves the spring line to the property line and drops it to 15 feet.
okay.
And 35 feet from natural grade height,
Yeah.
period.
No, there is tenting already in the proposal.
Yes.
so
There
this
is.
Alternative tenting.
It's additional information to the tinting. It's maybe more clarification or options.
I like that word.
Yeah,
and you seconded this motion?
I did.
Alex.
Thank you, guys.
There you go, Dave.
Okay, there's a first, a motion and a second. Any additional discussion?
I have a question, Alex, on the Palo Alto plan. The note says that the plane is measured from average grade. Is that part of what we're doing? Because the average grade with a sloped lot is gonna be a really dramatic change.
It could be, and that's one of the concerns I have about this one in particular, because the example they use looks, you know,
The example they use is a very mild slope.
very mild slope.
Yeah.
So I think it's just one of those things that has to be thought through. But the other option is also what the city of Austin does, which is to decide whatever distance you want to take your measurements along that line. And Austin uses 40 feet. We could say, you know, divide the side up into quarters, or, you know, we could pick a number. We could, you know,
Well, we have to be able to regulate this and to do this. And part of the problem that we've had, I'll just tell you, one of my goals on this was to make sure that our staff was able to and our third-party people were able to make sure that we didn't fall in the same trap we fell in last time, which was we had a disconnect between what our staff thought was the rules and what our third party thought was the rules. And you do that with simple rules as opposed to making them real complicated on that. Remember, everything we do is subject to an appeal to the Board of Adjustment. So everybody has a right to ask for whatever they want on that. So
If they can prove significant hardship.
well, if you have a highly sloped lot, that certainly
That would,
Could I speak to the motion?
sure.
As I understand, the motion is to pass on to P and Z the currently approved, parallel plane design with its accompanying tenting provisions that are already in there. But to pass on a recommendation that they consider this other tenting scheme, which you spelled out. And I can just tell you that, you know, they're gonna take that as a recommendation from us, and there's no way I can vote
Well,
for making
I'm-
that recommendation, looking at this for 30 minutes.
Yeah, I'm not trying to do that on the tinning. I'm trying to go with our existing tinning deal and using this as, I'm not proposing, in my motion, I'm not saying we're gonna accept this as opposed to what we have in the current, proposal.
That's
I
what
thought you
sounded
said it
like.
as a recommendation, though,
It
that they
sounded like.
consider this.
Well, I
As
want
an
them to,
alternative.
this was supposed to be a clarification of the tinning rule, just a clarification of that,
What-
not a replacement.
What you could do is take our current recommendation and say, instead of taking the measurement along the setback line, we propose moving it to the property line and setting the spring line to 15 feet. And then we can say that that needs to be measured every whatever distance we want, or we could say you can add 6 inches per foot up to 5 additional feet if you wanted, if it's sloping. You know, there's many ways to do it. I don't have the answer. I don't know what's the best.
Well,
I agree with Dave that the P and Z is looking to us for recommendations.
Yeah.
And if we pass along our current recommendations with an addendum that they seriously consider this, they're gonna look at it as a recommendation.
well, then I think that, I think that's a good point, Jay, and I think then, I'm not prepared to say that this is what I would do. I was thinking that we were taking our existing tinning wording that we have in there, that we've already sent them, and that this was some clarification to that.
That's not what I was hearing. And that's not what it said, that's not what the motion sounded like.
The only
Honestly,
thing,
and I agree with Jay, that I cannot digest this at this moment. I do not, we got this minutes ago. It's, again, it's a complicated issue. If we decide that we can't resolve the building height and tenting issue this evening, then I guess we need to come back, because I need more time to look at this.
so what is the difference? Let's get to the difference on this. The difference in our existing tinning recommendation and what this would be. Is there,
We
tell me
don't-
the difference.
We don't have any provisions for slope. We haven't defined what happens when there's slope, and we could do an average height. This is what I'm saying, that I feel like we're giving an incomplete recommendation. We haven't told them, how do you solve the slope along the side? And so I think we need to give them some options, or tell them to figure it out, like, it's just, we have several ways we could do it.
I thought that with the parallel plane, as it travels along the slope, we would continue to maintain a 25-foot high wall along that slope, or not. I mean, it could be something less. You can cut in, you do whatever you want, but that the parallel plane was already defined, and you just stay within sight of that. The maximum being, I guess at its flattest point, 25 feet, and then whatever you project off of that and you're tenting, that's fine. Now, if you want to change the degree that we are tenting by, from 1 foot to something different, 6 inches, I guess that is something that could be digested quickly, but trying to consider a different way of handling slope at this juncture, I can't do it tonight. I got a dream on this. I don't know. I'm not sure I understand what I'm reading. I see some pictures here. I'm not even sure I understand.
Well, the only difference, to answer my question, the only difference on this from the tinning standpoint is how it evolves to the slope
Yeah.
on it. And I wasn't addressing that slope issue with my tinning. I didn't mean to anyway. I may have gotten wrong, because I wasn't, I think they probably want to look at everything that we're doing. But I'm not prepared to do to address that part of it right now. I think I was addressing what we already had sent over there with the really 2 changes, 612 and the lot line.
And we could
And
leave
that
it at
was
that. I mean, that's fine too.
The unfortunate thing is that the next P and Z meeting is next Wednesday. And we have no other meetings, here for the CRCRC scheduled between then and now.
I
So
thought we
either
were
we
meeting
do,
on Tuesdays.
excuse me?
Next Tuesday.
P and Z is on.
Oh, P and Z, excuse
P&Z
me.
is
Okay.
on Wednesday, right?
All right,
It's
okay.
next Wednesday,
All right,
right?
not us, not us.
I've already put an
Excuse me.
agenda out there. It's already there, okay? And that agenda includes the same item. If there are changes being made, these are the things that they are, okay? Which we would have hopefully discussed and decided this evening. But again, I don't feel prepared to make this, what I consider to be radical change, this evening. I can't do it.
Okay.
And, which means we push back another month, okay?
I'm not sure we'll be any better off a month from now.
Yeah.
No.
So I would let me kind
I'd
of,
make an alternative proposal or amendment perhaps,
Sure.
that we pass on the current proposal as is to P and Z with the caveat that we are working on some alternative ways of perhaps dealing with height. I mean,
Or tinting.
Tinting,
Yeah.
sorry, tinting.
Well, that's a good idea.
They won't do anything.
Well, if there was a decision made at P and Z that what we have provided is not adequate, then I think they could send it back to us. Whatever adequate means, okay? That it's not acceptable, all right? But I'm happy with what we've done so far. It works in my view. I think that, I guess there's this so-called workshop that we're gonna be doing someday that is gonna prove that this thing works or doesn't. But as far as I can tell, as much as we've thought about it, I think what we have proposed already does in fact work.
So Jay, on your amendment, would that have the side setback, being the lot line, the lot line issue, or just leave it as is?
As is.
Leave it as is.
As is. And
Okay.
I would say, well, we could say that we're working on some additional ideas, but I kinda like your idea better, that we just send this on without comment. Let them decide whether they want some more ideas, and we'll just keep working on it.
Yeah, there's no perfection here. There is best, there's very good, but I think we're at least at very good. I'm hoping we're at best.
Well,
And I can tell you, I can't count the number of hours we've discussed this.
well, there's 2 points on this. One, what we have now would have resolved a lot of the issues that citizens raised
That is
concerns
correct.
about.
Yes,
So that is a big thing.
yes.
The other is, that we have, this has had more, research, discussion than any height item we've ever reached in the city of Rollingwood. I can promise you
You could,
that.
exponentially more.
So, it's no, now there's gonna be, obviously, we all know that there's gonna be discussion about slope lots, at P and Z and at city council. And, that's gonna be there. I don't see any harm in saying, and letting them see what we've, that all the information we've had. And they're gonna see it anyway, because it's public information, so they should get it.
Is it supposed to be on the website?
That went into the agenda
It went
packet
into
this late, yeah.
What I would ask is if we go forward with what we've already approved, that any discussion that happens at P and Z be there to answer questions about what is approved, not to go there and make suggestions as to how to change it.
Then
So,
why have P and Z discuss it at all?
Well, they,
Because they're the ruling body, because they are the people that make
So
the
they're
decision
not-
as to whether
has
to do this. Yes.
David, I will tell you, in my opinion, P and Z has a responsibility to take this, our recommendation,
Yeah.
and apply it and make sure that it works,
Yeah.
and make sure they should go through a lot of what we've gone through to get to this point. I will just tell you, that's my feeling.
All right, and that's
I'll-
fair.
Jay, I think this is gonna be convoluted if we try to do it the way we're doing it. I'm gonna withdraw my motion, and then, Alex,
That's
if
fine.
you're okay with that, and then the floor is open to make another motion.
Would you like to, or I can?
Go ahead.
I recommend, I
So
motion.
we'll be dropping,
Yes, we're dropping
withdraw
that
my
motion,
motion.
okay. I motion that we go forward with our recommendation as previously discussed and has been codified to date. And that we give it to P and Z and allow them to make a determination as to whether that works for them, and if not, they can send it back to us.
Well,
And that includes building height and tenting, as written.
I second the motion.
All right. Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion?
Does any of that include what we are proposing? We had at some point, we had approved some concepts of how to deal with what I referred to as knolls and holes. The ability to excavate, and we would have some portion of the house at higher than 35 feet, but under the
I don't know, is that in there?
The original native ground surface means the existing grade on a lot prior to development of the residential building and may be shown on certified topographic parallel, okay? I believe there is,
I just want to make sure what it is that we are forwarding, Dave.
yeah. Existing grade may be adjusted graphically as a straight line across unusual or minor topographic variations, including pools, ponds, existing basements, rock outcroppings, depressions, and natural drainage ways, with the intent to approximate original grade without penalty for previous construction.
So that's in there.
It's in there. This is the document.
I like your term better, Ryan.
Well, I know, it's
Well,
more
we don't have
graphic,
holes and nose in there, that's true.
but it's not very, it's not very legalistic.
No, I just
so
like it, that doesn't matter.
It rhymes, you just like rhymes, you know?
Right.
What are you reading from?
This is the codified document that we've been
That
trying to
was
get.
that was September the
This
fourth.
is
That's what
it.
was presented on September the
September
4th.
4th, that's right, we were looking at this, that's right. I was praying that people would say, yes, that looks really good.
Well, is that on the minutes of September the
Where
4th?
is that? I don't even have that document.
It's, well, I think if you go back to the September 4th meeting, it'll be there.
It's in our packet?
It's in the packet for September 4th. I didn't put it in the packet tonight because, it should be done. We ought to be there.
Yeah, but Dave, we had a joint meeting and there was some conversation and then there was an agreement that we would go back and look at these things and discuss them. And,
We can make
you know,
copies
I
of
mean,
this if
that
you
was,
want.
Make copies of that. I want to know exactly what it is we're,
Yeah, okay. Can we
dealing
get-
with.
These three documents you gave us tonight, they're in the packet for tonight. So
Yeah.
you have- So P and Z will be.
Can you run
Yeah.
a copy or Jerry? All right.
this is. Yeah, okay.
Everything that is in that document, we have approved already.
can I get a copy of that,
Okay, well,
please?
who knows how to work a copy machine?
I can make some copies. Here, I'll get it.
Thank you, Nikki.
Alex,
I think that one for everyone here, you have mine.
So we're still
Well, I think-
discussing the
yeah.
motion.
All right.
yeah, we haven't called the vote. Well, first of all, we wanna read what we're.
I want to make sure I understand what the motion is, and if
And I
the
think,
motion is
yeah.
documented by that, if that's the document, then we know, I know what the motion
So,
is.
at that joint meeting,
Yeah,
I walked out the door thinking, okay, we're gonna absorb what everybody said and decide how that's going to fit into our proposal we've got so far. That's what I thought.
we had the opportunity at the joint meeting to actually declare this finished. And didn't do it.
But you may remember,
But you were for it. Yeah, I know. You're right. I remember it.
I think that, as long as, I accept that P and Z has a responsibility to, take our suggestions. They don't have to accept it, as is. They can add to it, they can change it, and as well, they, in my opinion, they probably, at least should consider doing all of that. I hope they don't, but they
Thank you.
could. That's what
Thanks so
P and
much.
Z is supposed to do, thank you. Now, this hadn't changed since,
No.
September.
No, nope, this is it.
I have read it.
This was the document. that-
There was discussion at the joint meeting about what I think is in option 2 that we've been looked at tonight, about allow additional height above 35 feet from existing or finished grade not to exceed 38 within an area that is 35 feet from any property line up to 1% of total building area or 3% of building footprint, whichever is greater. I don't understand the average ridge line issue. Is that something we want to add to this at all, or do we just want to say what we have in the draft is what we're going to approve?
I am happy with what we have in the draft, and if it needs to, no, people are listening to our discussion, and they know that there are possibilities out there. But in order to get this thing off the dime, I just assume move this forward, get it to the next phase, and if it needs to be handed back, then we'll do it. Otherwise, we may be finding ourselves in our last meeting this evening.
So I would suggest this too. The only comment that I would have on that is to make sure that the P and Z has all the data that we've looked at and gone through, and especially maybe this last parts of this, because I think that's important, because this is a response, Alex, this is basically a response to that joint meeting, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I think that's very important that they look at the information. Alex, thank you so much for all this work you've done. This is fantastic.
Alex says it is on the website
Yeah,
for this meeting.
yeah. And I just want to make sure
Yeah.
they know it's there.
Do,
Okay.
And I'm
Has-
speaking to them, I hope, on the Zoom.
do we have these documents somewhere online?
Yes.
No, they're not online yet.
They are not.
I think so. Maybe not the.
Yeah,
the
and I don't think,
options.
This is not online.
honest,
It
I
is
don't,
now.
we
It just-
can't,
right? I
we
think it goes
can't do anything with any of this
Okay.
unless we have it in our system,
now.
okay? So, if,
It will be
I don't even-
online by Wednesday.
I don't even know where to put it.
Well, that was a comment, not an
Yeah.
amendment to your motion, Jay.
I mean, I think it could be put online for tonight's meeting, after the meeting, right? And
I
then-
don't know, we can't, can we post this for tonight's meeting after
It's
tonight?
already in here. She put it in earlier.
Oh, she
I'm
did?
looking at it right now.
I'm getting a little confused, what's the document?
These documents, building height considerations and how contending work?
The how contending work and those other three
This
things
has
that are
already been
stapled are in
online.
here.
Those, yes, those
Okay.
are, that document is online.
That's
That other one that you
Oh, I
have
didn't,
is
how did that happen?
Option one and
How did that
No,
happen?
because I just made that and handed
Alex
it
sent it to me before the meeting, and so I put it in the packet.
Oh.
Yeah.
So that one right there, that one is, and then I'm not sure about what is on top of that.
That one's not, because I had
Yeah.
just printed it.
Just make
before I
sure
came
all
up
of
here.
them
So-
are online
I can
before
forward it
the
to you.
next
All
Yeah,
right.
sure, that would be great.
P and Z meeting.
All right, well, we have a motion and we have a second. I guess we have these documents online, still not sure what to do with them, but I will promise to memorize them and understand them as deeply as I can. And, so any further discussion?
We're voting on this.
We are voting on this, which we frankly have voted already on, I believe. I don't think there's anything in here that we haven't voted on. So it's effectively going forward with, yes, this is our recommendation at the moment. We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Alan is
The ayes
abstaining.
carry. Did everyone vote?
Yeah.
Everyone did vote. Thank you.
Huh?
You did.
Aye, yeah.
All right, thank you. All right.
That's what you call,
We have-
that's what you call a little lie.
It's a
When it
little
comes- I had a little lie too, Alex.
Thank you, everyone. My prayers have been answered.
Well, that's our
We're not
job,
through with
is
the
to make
agenda
your
yet.
prayers answered.
Okay,
Don't
yeah, we're
start
not through
praying
with the
yet.
agenda yet. Okay, let's move it along here. Agenda item number 8, and that is discussion and possible action on tree removal fee recommendations, and I believe this one is Jay's.
Yeah, it was put on there by me,
Yeah.
after, one of the council members, suggested that perhaps the fee for a tree removal permit for heritage trees should be, greatly increased from the regular tree removal permit, which I think, Nikki, is $300 or something like that.
But what would we go
Do you
to? I mean,
wanna-
I don't, do we have anything in the packet about what we would be really doing here?
I want to put on record, in the fee schedule, we do not have a fee for a tree removal permit, period.
Okay. So how do they pay for the permit? Just as part of the building permit?
Jay.
You do have a building permit, do you?
Okay, yeah, okay.
Well,
Then you're making a recommendation.
making a discussion that perhaps we should have a fee for both the tree removal permit and
We're
also.
going, currently, we're going off of historical documents
Okay,
that have been passed down.
okay. And
So-
that's not, this is not something that we're putting in the ordinance, the tree ordinance, because there are no fees stated in the
No.
ordinance. But we would recommend a fee be established for a regular tree removal permit, something reasonable. I don't think we have to come up with an amount on that one. But probably what it is, I know I paid for a tree removal permit.
So the fee that we are charging from historical documents is $100 for an application and $35 for every tree removed.
Okay. So,
I would wager that there is somewhere a ordinance that was passed, and I don't know where it would be, that put a number on that.
are fees usually put in the ordinance or no?
You have, when you
Passed by
pass an
council.
ordinance, you say, okay, you're gonna have to have
Okay.
a fee for that.
So if the tree ordinance that we're proposing is passed, I would suggest we make a recommendation that the fee for, heritage removal permit as a separate permit, which we're proposing, I've heard different figures proposed to me, but I'm gonna throw one out there, be $10,000.
Well, that got the attorney.
Well, what suggested to me was $20,000, but, you know, I'm just
There are-
throwing it out there for discussion.
Let me, before we get too much into that, I can't help but to believe that that the legislature hadn't addressed this and there's a maximum we can charge.
No, that's for fees, there is no maximum in the legislature. For penalty, there is a maximum.
Yeah, and it was brought up at a city council meeting, I
That's right.
believe, that the penalty needs to be, in the code, needs to be updated. It should be $2,000 per occurrence,
Per day.
per day, and not, $500. So
If you
No,
chop
that's-
down the tree, how many days do you
Yeah.
calculate?
It's
Yeah.
gonna be a lot of them.
And until
Well,
a new,
that's
until a new 20-inch tree is grown
that's
there,
until you've made
that'll be
it.
200 years.
You've made arrangements to remedy or rectify the situation.
Well, you go
with
to
the
court.
city, so.
And the judge.
But we're not talking about penalties.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about a fee for the heritage tree removal permit. Whether
Well-
we can make a suggestion, and it's just a suggestion to the city,
That's right.
we think it should be in order to disincentivize people from removing heritage trees, and that's what we're trying to do.
At the last city council meeting, this came up a bit, and I already let city council know that we were considering this, and that they could expect to hear some kind of a recommendation from this group in the next city council meeting. And, so here we are. And, I think a recommendation is a great idea. It's as far as we can go with it. But, have you made,
Does anybody wanna throw out any other numbers, or?
I would.
Well, this, I mean, $10,000 to me sounds like a lot of money for that, but I also I heard.
We're talking about a heritage street.
I know that, and
Yeah,
there
okay.
are two parts of this that I see. One is, if I have an option of saving a heritage tree and still be able to build on my lot, that's one issue. Okay, that's one price. If I just, by God, decide, for instance, one I have personal knowledge of, there was a heritage tree that was on the corner of a lot that could still be there, and nothing would have changed on that house. Then that amount of money is nothing for what I would charge. So I'm not sure how to do that, Jay. But you see, am I making
I mean,
myself?
somebody could say, okay, it's gonna cost me $10,000 to remove this heritage tree, which I have to get board approval for.
Yeah.
Also, I'm just gonna sneak in there and, have them do it during the night. That's when the penalty comes in.
Yeah. Well,
And that's why, it should be $2,000 per day.
Well, with the way it can work, as I understand it, is that you can charge a penalty, and if you're delinquent in removing a tree, the city also can charge the fee.
Well, the city has another option, and that is to pull
City-
your permit. They can freeze your
Sure
permit.
they can.
And that's if you wanna know what, if you really wanna know what a builder, you get their attention, is you say, look, you're red tagged until this is resolved.
Yeah.
And it may be until you grow a 20-inch tree again, which may take a while, but that's really the point that gets them more than anything else. So,
When we're talking about a heritage tree and a fee, are we talking about a heritage tree that is in like the setback areas of the yard, or if it's within the buildable area, would it be included in this?
We're not talking about buildable areas,
No.
but building footprint is
Yeah.
what Wendy's
Building,
saying.
okay, thank you.
They could remove a heritage tree from their building footprint without a special heritage tree permit. Okay? So that one would cost whatever a regular tree permit costs, just in the proposed building footprint.
well,
But if it's removed from the remaining building area or the setbacks, then you have to have a heritage tree removal permit and has to be approved by the Board of Adjustment. And we're talking about the fee for that permit.
Chair.
Oh, someone is
Amy.
raising their hand.
Amy.
Amy Patillo, would you like to speak?
Sure, thanks. I'm jumping around today, so I tried to jump on and listen to this item. And I just thought I would give you guys one piece of historical information, which is that when we were working on the tree ordinance the first time, under state statute, what I recall, and y'all can go and look at it, because I'm sure you've looked at the state statute more in depth than I have recently to see how it's changed. But when we were working on it, if you could charge a tree removal fee, but you couldn't charge it if the tree was diseased or dying. And so one of the things that when we first set up the paradigm for the tree ordinance, and of course it was written so that as the community understands it and evolves, it can grow. So I'm glad y'all are having the conversation. But the point was that there was a paradigm there where if we moved too close to charging fees versus incentivizing people to just follow the ordinance and replant trees, that we might see people start poisoning trees. And especially at that point in time, as I've mentioned when I've commented on this before, because we didn't have anything in place at all, we were not wanting people to go out and just start clear cutting lots. We wanted to provide an ordinance that people felt like they could comply with, and that would incentivize people to plant trees versus paying fees. So glad to hear the conversation now, if it's something that the community is wanting to hear, but just thought I would give y'all that background on why there wasn't a large fee initially charged.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah. Okay. So, I think,
One question, Jay. What do other communities charge?
For tree permit.
Well, for
permits.
heritage tree removal, what's the maximum anybody's charging?
I don't know. I'd have to look into that. Nikki, do you have any idea on tree removal permit fees in other cities?
I think on the City of Austin, you just can't do it.
I think that's,
I think typically, with some of the jurisdictions that I've seen, you charge an application fee, which is charging for the processing of the application, the determinations, review, all that kind of stuff. As far as per tree, typically the ones that I've seen is not necessarily a fee per tree, but the cost of mitigation, which is totally different than what we do here. So it's like the mitigation fee goes into a specific tree fund, which we don't do here, and that goes into a whole bunch of other stuff. So typically it's the cost of the application, and then, as Amy was mentioning, keeping that cost low so that we're still building up application costs and processing fees, but keeping it low enough that people are still following the process.
Thank you. Jay, I guess just to keep this moving, I mean, I don't know how to take a number on this, but the recommendation was 10,000. That was a number that, I don't know, David, did you come up with that, or Jay?
no, Jay came up with 10. I would rather it be 20.
I mean, we're taking the stab in the
There's,
dark.
I know that there's at least one city council member who's considering something much higher than that.
I mean,
Here's, oh, sorry, go ahead.
it would be there to try to a monetary disincentive to
Yeah.
even apply to remove a heritage tree.
Yes.
And I think,
And,
yeah.
yes, I can see that if it's too high, they're gonna look for a workaround, like poisoning the tree
Yeah.
or something, but we have laws about that, I mean, you know.
Here's some reference. Portland, Oregon, for a 24-inch tree, it's $7,200, which is 24 inches times $300 per inch. Austin is from 4,800 to 48,000. Sometimes it's $200 to 2,000 per inch. Seattle, 3,000 per inch. Georgia is from 5,000 to 10,000, depending on species and location. Palo Alto, 10,000. San Antonio.
So I guess,
It would seem an area that has low tree density would want to charge a higher rate
yeah.
than an area that has high tree density. And I would consider us to be somewhere in the middle. We don't have high tree density here. And so the sacred nature of a heritage tree, I think, is greater here than it would be in, say, maybe Seattle. So I think if we were going to make a recommendation, we ought to go high.
You're thinking 20.
I'm thinking 20.
Is that a motion?
I will make it a motion.
I'll second your motion.
Okay, I'm gonna make it my motion is that we make a recommendation to city council that for the removal of a heritage tree permit, that it be accompanied by a fee of $20,000.
When the heritage tree is in a setback, right? Is that?
And a heritage tree is one that is not in the building footprint.
Okay.
is there a fee for the removal of the tree, or is it purely a permit fee, or are we talking about two fees?
It's a permit fee because they'll be responsible for the cost of removing the tree.
I would like to suggest, having just read this, that there's some, it makes sense to follow the number of inches of diameter, because you're just saying any tree that's 24 inches or greater is $20,000. I think that's maybe a little extreme. I think that, you know, some, like I have trees that are 4 feet in diameter. Like, I think that that's maybe a $20,000 tree, but I'm not sure that it's the same value as.
Do you have a sliding scale there that might apply?
Do what?
Do you have a sliding scale there?
Well,
that
I
might
just,
apply?
I asked Claude AI to give me a list of cities, and this is, you know, it can range based on, you know, the number I'm seeing a lot is $300 an inch. You
$300.
start with a flat
Yeah,
fee,
right.
and then you add up to, you know, this, San Francisco is up to 10,000 per
What's the
tree.
flat fee?
Permit
So-
fee is $339 for a single tree. Fines for unauthorized removal up to 10,000.
Well,
It's
whenever
just
you're talking
different.
about that, you're talking about other than heritage
Wait,
trees too,
I
aren't you?
was in the wrong
I mean, you're
spot.
really
I'm
talking
sorry.
about protected trees all the way through whatever the highest thickness of a tree would be.
Yeah.
How
I
about-
mean, we were only talking about heritage trees at this point. Okay.
How about 10,000 for 24 inches and 1,000 for every inch?
I
above
think
that?
Alex has got the key though, is it needs to be per inch. And
That's
so
what
let's
I'm
take a
proposing.
24-inch tree and say, okay, that should be $20,000. So it's, what is that, $700
What is
some dollars.
what is the definition of heritage? How big?
A heritage tree is 4.5 feet, 24 inches.
At
24 inches
4.5
at 4.5
20,
height.
yeah,
Yeah,
24,
right,
yeah.
right about here.
All right, so at 24 inches, which would be the start of a heritage tree, at $20,000. I don't have it.
So,
That should-
at 24 inches, it would be $20,000 plus any amount, some amount over 24 inches?
Yeah,
Yeah,
then
so-
it needs to be per X over that per inch.
So if you had a 4-foot tree, like what we just heard is in Alex's yard, if that were removed, it was 4 feet, that would be what? Double $20,000, it'd be $40,000?
Okay, and then divide the 20 by, and that's how many inches more?
That's 24 inches more.
So, $1,000 per inch.
Say it,
That's the way it looks.
round it up,
Suggest
make
is-
it $1,000 an
Yeah.
inch, yeah.
And I would suggest, personally, because I am sensitive to what was said about incentivizing people to do something illegal.
I think that's,
Start
Wow.
at 10,000 and $1,000 for every inch above that,
At 24 inches,
at 24 inches.
at 24 inches.
Yes, so $10,000.
Why don't we split the difference and make it 15?
15,000.
Yeah.
$1,000 for every inch over 24 inches.
Yeah.
What would a 40-foot tree cost?
are you modifying your motion?
I'm negotiating.
That sounds good to me.
What do you, I mean, if they could, you know, I was happy with a straight $20,000. But if you wanna turn it into, you know, a sliding scale based on the thickness of
I
the tree.
think that's probably a better way to do it.
Okay,
Yeah.
but let's start at a higher number, and then we'll just go, why don't we start at 15 and then go up $1,000 an inch after that? Are we all right with that?
I'm okay with that.
Well, you
So then I have to restate my motion. Okay, my motion is that we recommend to City Council that there be a fee charged for the removal of a heritage tree, along with a heritage tree removal permit of $15,000 for a 24-inch at 4.5 feet tree with a scale of $1,000 per additional inch past 24.
Are you seconding that, Jay?
Oh, that's a new motion?
Yeah.
I second it.
Okay, we got that, Michaela?
All good.
Cool. All right, and, okay, we have a motion, a second, any further discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Ayes carried. All right. we're finished with this item, I think, then. Discussion and possible action on CRC, this is item number 9. Discussion and possible action on CRC positions on drainage, impervious cover, and FAR. Some time ago, we had asked Brian to write effectively a position paper on where we were and.
Yeah, this is a result of one of our subcommittees, which was me, Tom, and Duke. And with Jerry's sitting in and helping, as well as Nikki sitting in and helping, and hearing the digging going on outside the city hall at the time. Basically, we looked at what, if anything, we should talk about in terms of drainage and impervious cover and FAR. And the findings are set out here that the drainage was not really something that we've spent a lot of time on because the city already has a drainage manual. They've been through long drainage studies recently, and we didn't feel like we needed to or should or had the ability to get into that. Impervious cover and FAR were questions that were dealt with or questions that were asked on the survey that we did, and there was not an appetite for an FAR in the answers, and there was, in looking at all the commentary, there was a commentary that dealt with some buildings are too big and that sort of thing, but that didn't square exactly with FAR. I'm frankly a fan of FAR, but I couldn't make a case from our survey that the community is. And so we had no recommendation that we adopt an FAR. And then impervious cover, we basically came to the same conclusion that we don't have a documented desire by the community to deal with that. There was in the comments acknowledgement by numbers of people that impervious cover is intended to be a drainage related issue, but frankly, in my dealings with the world outside of this committee and outside of this community, impervious cover has been used as a land use regulation, much like an FAR, rather than really demonstrating that it has water quality results. To me, I haven't seen that. That yes, if you can drain something across 20 acres of grass, you're going to get a better water quality. But if you drain it across a 10-foot setback, I don't know that you do, and I can't make an argument that from the survey that we should. So frankly, I wrote the memo as to where we came out, which was we don't have a recommendation that we do anything with these issues. So that's my.
I thought it was an excellent position paper.
I think that I like the document that we had talked about, and nothing ever came of it. But Alex had done a really good job of illustrating FAR and how it was perceived by the survey, and I would like to see that graphic included in your paper, just for the sake of clarity.
Okay, I'll go back and.
If you would be agreeable to allowing that.
Sure. I think it was in the.
Pardon?
Where's this document?
It's in the package. It's item number 9 in the package.
Today?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's in there.
it's been in there for
I
all
looked
week.
at it
This is
yesterday.
not a new one. This has been in
I
since.
put it, no, we put it in there last week. Yeah.
Sorry, I haven't seen it.
It's a good.
Got a question on the floor.
Please.
Sarah Hudson, 2805 Rockway. I read through this, and there are a couple comments I would like to make. First, at the bottom of page 1, I think your comment is backwards, where it says, it assumed that a requirement of more impervious cover on an improved property would result in some way to reduce and slow water.
Where are you now?
On page 1.
Page, bottom paragraph.
Bottom paragraph, what part of it?
Yeah, the middle.
All right,
It says, it should, I believe, should say it is assumed that a requirement of less impervious cover on improved lot would result in some way to reduce.
We got that correct.
And again, on the bottom line also, with the FAR, it's therefore less impervious cover. If you have more yard area,
Those
you have
were
less.
supposed to be corrected. You're
Okay.
catching something, yeah, that we,
Okay.
thank you.
And then the discussion on the top of page 2. So Rolling Wood is in the Edwards Aquifer recharge zone, not the Barton's Creek recharge zone. I don't think that's,
Oh, God. You know what, I think we have posted here a pretty old document.
Pardon?
I think what we have posted here is something that you had done prior. It is not your most up-to-date.
Okay.
Well, it includes all these errors
Okay.
that Sarah has put, describing here.
okay.
What did you say about the,
Well, we're in the Edwards Aquifer recharge zone, not
not the
Barton
Barton
Creek.
Creek?
Right. So I also wanted to comment on the TCEQ regulations, and I believe that the TCEQ regulations are a water quality issue. And so the 20% impervious cover that triggers requirements is for water quality. And the impervious cover limits that we had talked in the past about considering are for runoff volume and rate, not water quality. So TCEQ does not do anything to regulate runoff other than requiring the kind of first flush of runoff of the impervious cover to prevent sediment from getting into water
You're
bodies.
talking about the black fencing stuff, or hay bales? or-
Well, no, even for off roofs or whatever. So the purpose of the TCQ rules is to keep sediment from getting into streams. So it's not to regulate how much water we have running through our drainage ditches.
We are in the Barton Creek Conservation District.
It's
But it's
not the
Edwards-
recharge zone.
Edwards Aquifer recharge zone.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we also are under the
Yeah.
Barton Creek Conservation District.
Okay, well, maybe then there's things that are conflated in here.
Yeah.
But-
We need to just make that correct.
This
I
needs
just-
cleaned up.
We
Yeah.
did this.
Well, and just to the focus or the tone of the letter, the questionnaire that was sent out for the CRCRC may not have had any questions about drainage, but my recollection is that on the strike force, the first survey that went out, that ended up focusing mostly on commercial and not on the residential, but drainage was the most highly referenced problem that was identified. So if there weren't any questions in the CRCRC questionnaire about drainage, then that was probably an oversight that should have been addressed, because that was really a very highly,
The people did comment on drainage in the comments to a greater degree than anywhere else. Yeah, they did.
right, that's a big issue. And so saying that,
But do we need to make a recommendation about that, or is that something that has been already taken care of at the council level?
it has
Sarah?
not been. We started with, some little projects. We have, dipped our toe into the drainage response, but, I mean, we're dealing with the drainage issue near Jerry's house, but there are lots of other areas where people have had drainage problems that we are not doing anything about yet. And so I think that we keep pushing off dealing with our drainage issues.
Well,
I think I just would like clarification, because there's drainage, but then there's the implication of building affecting drainage. And so I'm never really clear how much of that is our responsibility. Like, I think we've been sort of told to address you know, building size or impacts or things like that. But to a certain degree, I'm not clear on how much of that should be on us to
And
address.
we don't have the engineering expertise really to deal with any of the issues, and nor do we have a budget to hire the engineers to do it with, Sarah.
Well,
What do you want us to do?
Yeah,
Well, I don't want you to blow it off. You know, I mean, say that there's nothing to be done.
No,
You know-
there's no recommendation that we can make.
well, I
That's what
think
I'm
that
saying.
isn't the recommendation to look at where we are with regard to the drainage control manual and how well that's working for us?
But I don't think that is what we were asked to do by
Well,
council.
And I don't think we know that,
that's
Dave.
under
Okay.
our.
Well, I mean, and I thought that it was to engage a professional engineering firm to look at where we are with that and
Well-
determine whether or not it's in fact working.
The only comment that I had a comment on that is just say, look, we took the first step with the drainage criteria manual. And we recognized when we did that, that was a first step. And, the only thing on that I'd suggested is that we actually take a look at that and see if we as a city are getting the bang for our buck for the money, the amount of money that's being spent for our residents having to pay for doing this, which, you know, whether we could use that money some other way that would give us greater benefit. That was the only comment I had on that. But I think that when it got down, Sarah, we're not trying to say, gee, there's no issue with drainage. We're saying that the information that we got at a survey said we don't want a FAR and we don't want impervious cover limitations.
And yet
that's-
everybody's very concerned about the drainage issues.
There's
Yeah.
no
And the-
question
Yeah.
that is a concern. I totally agree with you. But I think we have to take a step back and say, is that really our task to address drainage? Because I think our task was focused on, really on buildings. And
Right.
so I think P&Z and there's other bodies that I feel like would be better served. Like, I don't think we can just keep adding stuff to our group. Like, I just
See,
don't,
we
I don't think we
the
have.
city had, the engineer, Kay Freeze, do a drainage,
We've had drainage plans done,
Plan.
and it was $17 million
yeah.
for all of the drainage projects that needed to be done.
And those are old pricings too.
They are old pricings, and they are old pricings based on the projected runoff from kind of what was there. And
And we have more now.
we have more now, and we're not doing anything to keep from getting more and more and more.
Well,
And that's my concern with saying that, you know, just the setbacks doesn't really limit how much can be built. I mean, it is a limit to how much can be built, but if everybody builds out to the setbacks, we're gonna have a whole lot more water to deal with. And, you know, we don't have $17 million
So
to
are-
fix what we've already talked about, and then we're gonna have even more. And so it just concerns me that, you know, we didn't look at impervious cover or any other way to address the amount of runoff that we're having to contend with when we did the strike force. But the commercial has an impervious cover limit.
Yeah.
And now CRCRC is doing the residential, and now we're not looking at it in the residential area. And so there's no limit on how much water can be generated.
but we do have an impervious cover limit, and that's set by the TCEQ.
No,
No.
we do not.
No.
There is no impervious cover limit in the city of Rollingwood in the residential area.
The only impervious cover
Other
limit
than the
you have
indirect,
is-
the
is
indirect
the
result
side
of the setback area.
That's it.
It-
That's what we
drainage-
rely
well,
on.
No, but that's not even an
No,
impervious
my-
cover limit, because you
my
can
un-
put driveways and sidewalks and
My
pools.
understanding is that, you know, given a space to start with, that you were allowed to increase the amount of impervious cover by a certain amount.
No,
And that's a limitation.
no. There's nothing in our code that limits the impervious cover in a residential.
No.
Well, I will
area.
say that I have heard comments, you know, somewhat recently, that people feel like we haven't addressed the bulk of people building out the entire setback.
Okay.
You know, in particular, some of the homes along Timberline that have consumed,
Okay.
you know, and so, you know, I think that we felt stymied by the survey saying,
Well,
but
if you
then the
didn't- if you
comments have
didn't
come up
ask.
since then, yeah.
If you didn't ask.
Well, we did
then-
ask
We did
about,
ask
we
about
did ask about
impervious
impervious cover.
and
We did not
FAR.
ask about drainage.
Yeah.
Okay,
And we got comments about drainage,
and
but
Yeah.
no, nobody has a solution for it.
okay,
$17
well,
million.
let's back. This is,
Well, that
this
doesn't-
document is probably doing what it needs to do because it's calling attention to where we think we are, but maybe we shouldn't be. All right? So if we haven't heard anything from anyone else outside of this group about this, okay? Not directly anyway, you know. And if there is a desire for us to dig into this more, it would be great to get some specific as to what that desire might be.
Okay.
And we can do that.
Sir, I don't mind.
But that would mean that this is not our last meeting.
I was surprised, frankly, that there were, the majority of people were against impervious cover limitations.
But they didn't offer another alternative.
Well, there were, because the concerns were what we could use the setbacks for. Setbacks were very important to people, is what I've heard on that, and to me too. But also, it was the size of it wasn't in fact, one of the questions dealt with, do we want to have a size limitation on houses or something along that line? And the answer was, no, we're not against big houses, we're against imposing houses that did that, which I was, you know, kind of, okay, maybe. It was a little different than what I thought it would be, frankly.
Well, but it's also not just the size of the house. It's like, because the house is not the only impervious cover.
Yeah.
That's right.
You know, your driveways, your sidewalks, your pool, you know, patio around your pool, your,
Aren't there impervious cover limitations mandated by the drainage manual that you have to apply?
No.
No.
Okay.
Every time that, in my opinion, in my history, every time impervious cover has come up,
it is a dirty word.
it has not been a real, there's pitchforks involved,
As I
there's
say, when I
flaming
built my
torches.
house,
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
definitely, I could not put in an additional driveway because it increased my impervious
Yeah,
cover.
I agree with you.
That-
It seems to me that we are limited. It seems to me.
It definitely
But,
limits.
but
your
I'd
impervious
have to go back and
Now,
look at the material.
Jay,
again.
that had
No.
to be from
It-
TCQ,
it-
it wasn't from the
Well,
city.
no,
right?
Right,
and
the
wouldn't even, and not
does
even
limit.
not even TCQ doesn't have a
Okay.
limit either.
No,
But they limit on percentages and what you're allowed to do within a particular area.
Mm-mm.
I don't,
Okay, well,
No.
I'll
Yeah.
check that, but
Yeah,
If-
you,
if we
you
could
have to
get-
put,
if-
you have to put in water quality abatement
Okay.
that was a
if you
difference.
exceed 20% on your
That's
lot.
right.
I,
right.
okay.
But,
here's-
but there is no limit on
all right.
how much above 20%.
Yeah,
Given-
the-
given-
here's
you
the
can
okay,
go.
question to
now,
John.
given
Let
the,
me make it-
excuse me a second. Given the discussion that there was around auxiliary buildings the other night, and, I got the sense that city council doesn't have a lot of appetite for adding things to the CRC set of things, okay? Now, and I could be wrong, but if there is something that specific that needs to be done with regard to impervious cover, even if it's just a short list of things to look at that you'd like to see an answer on or whatever, we'll take it on, but we're not sure what that is.
Okay, well, my first concern was when I read this, and there were some things in here that are, to me, not accurate, that I wanted to make sure were clarified and corrected so that we don't get a recommendation
I think they
that includes information that's not accurate. And if, you know, if everything that y'all have addressed has taken a lot longer than everybody thought it was gonna take, so I hesitate to add anything additional at this point in time, but I don't want a recommendation coming that's not accurate, that includes information that's not
Would
accurate.
it be possible to establish a meeting or something like that where we can hash a couple of things out and figure out what the next step is?
Let me make a suggestion, Dave. What if we submit this
Yeah,
and say, okay, if the city council feels like that we need to expand or do something different on this, then they should, I think it would be, I
That's
think
fair.
the city council then would come back and say, okay,
Yes.
CRCRC, we would like for y'all to look at different things on impervious cover or drainage or how we do that. I think that would be.
I think that's essentially what we're doing with the building heights and the tenting, and
That's
it's
what I
kind of,
think
we're
we
just
do.
sending it to a place. I think that's a fair thing. I think also too, and I have, my apologies here, I believe that this is an earlier draft
Okay.
that got into the packet by mistake. This was my fault. So I grabbed something that I'd gotten from you earlier and I got it in, I think it's the dated wrong or something, but anyway, I know
It says
that
draft
there-
August 27th.
Yeah,
here,
well,
so-
that's fairly recent, that's fairly recent. But I will go out and find what you gave me last. And we can, and we'll start with that, if we may.
Yeah,
I
and
just,
we can tweak this. We'll tweak it.
All
And
right.
so, Sarah, I'm so shocked that you stood up on drainage. I just can't believe that you did that.
20 years been trying to get something done
Sarah's-
on drainage.
I just want to say, for clarification, it was question 20, should more be done to limit the amount of impervious cover on a building lot?
Yeah.
Yes was 102, no was 159.
Yeah.
But if you read the comments on no, there's a sense that everybody feels that the drainage manual is adequate or that they feel it's too onerous already. And so I think that if there's maybe a lack of education, including me, about what exactly the drainage manual does, but I think that
That's a lot.
there's a lot of people upset about moats and all of that, you know, could be addressed, but I don't know. It's like I said, it's this overlapping topic
Right.
of how do you address drainage, or are we just dealing with impervious cover? And I think that that's why that's why more people said no to that, is because of the drainage manual and the misinformation about what exactly it does. So I'm just adding that for clarification.
Well, I will say that the comment that was made when we were talking about this a number of years ago with a different council and a different mayor and whatever, was that the drainage criteria manual requires you to maintain the same flow rate
Right.
off your property
Yeah.
as pre-change. And the thinking by the non-engineers was that there's no increase in flow when you do that. And it's like, there's no increase in the rate of flow off of that property, but there is more volume generated. When you increase the size of, you know, the impervious cover on a lot, you generate more water.
Well, you generate water faster.
No,
No.
you
More
generate
quantity.
more runoff.
Well, that assumes that there's an absorption rate, which here in this part of the world is very low.
I will,
Yeah.
just so you know, I mean, the drainage criteria manual, it was, I always considered a first step. And that was you can call it a baby step if you want to, but remember how, that was extremely difficult
It
to
was-
pass
Was very difficult,
in this
yes.
city.
Yes.
And, I mean, it was not easy to get past.
Right.
That was hard. So, anything we do on drainage that limits our citizens' ability to use their property is going to be we have to recognize that that's going to be
Contentious.
pitchforks and
Yeah.
torches
But, you
and,
know,
But the people whose houses are getting,
I know.
I mean,
Yeah.
this is how we're losing trees,
Inundated are not happy
and this is
either.
how we're having impacts of big houses next to us. I mean,
Yeah.
it does help solve a lot of the issues that we're having to deal with
Yeah.
from an external pathway. But, you know, once again, you just give me a list of impervious cover
Well,
limits for single-family homes in the US. You know, Austin 45%, Seattle 35, Portland 40 to 50, Atlanta 40 to 50, Minneapolis 50, San Antonio 50 to 65. You know, you get the idea. And I think that because I have heard recently, you know, from people like, why aren't you addressing, you know, people that are fully building out setback to setback, which I agree. I think most of us don't like that, and there's definitely a trend towards that. So from that sense, I mean, this is the part where I'm like, I don't really want to tackle the drainage manual, but I would be willing to revisit impervious cover with the idea that we,
Well,
Yeah.
I'd like to get it, if in fact we have a problem that needs to be solved, I'd like to get a definition of the problem.
so,
All right, and I think that what Tom's recommendation earlier was taking what we have written and sending it up and seeing whether or not it sticks or not, I think is a good idea too.
so I'm prepared to
But-
make a motion on that.
Okay,
I would make a motion that we submit we authorize, Brian to, a clean copy of the latest and cleanest copy of this, report. We send it to council with a note on it that says, should we need to look at additional items on this, we are prepared to do so.
should we run it, since our charter says we're supposed to, should we run it through P and Z
It
first?
certainly goes to P and Z
Let's
first.
go to fir-
Everything,
okay, so you amend that to P and Z,
yes,
okay?
P and Z and council.
P and Z and council, okay, thank you.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. All right, do we have any additional discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay,
Thank you,
Thank you.
Sarah.
I would like the opportunity to spend some time with you discussing the problem. Okay, thank you.
Sarah's got
We're on-
20 years,
Okay, all right.
well, and I do think that this was the very first topic to come up when this came back up again, was addressing impervious cover.
Right.
And,
I know how contentious this issue gets to be, and, it is a,
you know, yeah. I think it's almost easier to address than FAR, cause it's very hard to measure FAR to an extent and figure all of those pieces out, but impervious cover is, you know.
impervious cover has a connotation that I assure you, hackles go up with that word. Whether it's correct or not, doesn't matter, they just go up. Let's, do
Well,
the
I've
10.
got a list of, I mean, I've got all these, site plans.
I gotta go to
You
do
know,
something.
I've
like to
printed
make a
that
motion
Yeah.
to
show.
adjourn.
Yeah, I-
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
I would like to move off of this topic
Yeah.
and then go
Item
to
10.
our final topic, discussion and possible action regarding setback requirements as related to vegetative barriers between lots. Jeannie Nair, I had requested that she join us, but she is unfortunately out of town, but she sent me an email, and I'm gonna read this to you. It says, "My concern is that having a vegetative barrier is important. If the side setbacks are already narrow on the side of the existing home and/or there is a public utility or drainage easement between two structures, I believe the side setback on the new build should be required to be at least 15 feet so that a vegetative barrier can be planted." Okay? Unfortunately, and she says she won't be able to make this meeting, but that's effectively what it is. What she's wanting is in certain circumstances, she wants to have the side setback expanded to accommodate a vegetative barrier. Now,
Oh,
So that is,
only if there is an easement there that would prevent a normal vegetative barrier there. And I thought she explained it very well during that joint meeting, and I was fully supportive of that.
so this is a proposal that we would modify the setback rules?
I believe that's right. I think what we would be doing is adding something to the setback rules.
Well, again, I sure would like to see that.
All right, well, let's see, is it amenable to everybody that we would want to do something with this?
I'm fine to want to do something with it, let's,
Okay.
I think her situation, like, there's nothing you could plant that's ever gonna be tall enough to mask what's there, and so,
No.
and certainly in Texas, it's hard to get anything that's gonna grow like that, so you have to say, is that really the right approach, or is tackling tenting the right approach, you know, and so, you know, that term vegetative barrier that came up with regard to Asheville was a very different thing. That was an area that was 50 feet it was natural and nobody could touch it. So, you know, if we're talking about landscaping,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
vegetative barrier is such a weird phrase, but I think we have to consider the fact that there's certain things that just can't be concealed, but.
Yeah, for me, you know, I'm in a part of Rollingwood that does not see a whole lot of water moving rapidly past things, and so there's not all these big drainage ditches around. And whenever I move to other parts of Rollingwood, I say, oh, like where Jeannie's at, and I say, oh, there's areas here that's got this rushing water, and they've got to do something about that. And it's hard for me to get my head around, well, what kind of a rule would we make that covers all of Rollingwood?
You don't cover all of Rollingwood.
Yeah, so-
Rollingwood has about 4, 5, we have so few drainage easements, it's just, you can do them on one hand, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
We just don't have that many.
So what will, I guess the question is, so what do we do with this?
Mm-hmm.
You
Well,
know,
her point,
yeah.
I think her point is, and
Yeah.
if you, and yeah, we don't have a lot of those, but we have, the ones we have, create well, the one on Park Hills Drive is another exact, and that's not an easement there.
Mhm.
We don't have an easement there, but it is, there is no vegetative barrier now between those lots
Yeah.
because of the way it was structured. So, if your house was there, it would be a big issue.
Mhm.
Even though, and I think that's the beauty of a small city is that we look at individuals and try to help them, like this.
Mhm.
But I think that her point is there needs to be space for, if there's an easement there, there needs to be space for a vegetative barrier.
Okay, and how do we, okay, so, I think what she's asking, specifically, she's asking for 15 feet. I mean, that might be negotiable, but is that something we want to make a recommendation around? Is that something we want to say, okay, within the setbacks, or we're gonna change the setback rules on the side to accommodate this particular kind of special situation? Do we want to say that, or what?
I gotta tell you, if you do that, you gotta change the whole setback rules.
No, setbacks are tough.
Because,
Yeah. I don't like-
and you gotta be careful too,
Yeah.
cause I may have misspoken there as I think through this. Is a PUE, is a public
can be
utility
utility
easement,
drainage.
Yeah.
and that's on each one of our lots.
Yes,
Well,
that's right.
not everybody in Rollingwood has a PUE, but,
A lot to.
most of us do.
Mhm.
And so that would be a implication on, how that would work on, I mean, we'd have to be careful on how we
You have
did
to look at
that.
each of the plats, and Rollingwood has dozens of plats.
Yes. And some lots do not have plats.
Yeah, some of the old ones that are grandfathered in from the Hatley boys.
Yeah.
So,
There is space. They could plant some stuff here. They could even plant partially in this drainage. I would also argue that these are ugly. Like, some of these are just, like, and where they've done that canalization by your house, like whatever they've done to the creek, the drainage
That's
there.
actually the Ashworth's house.
Yeah, well, you're right,
I'm one
yeah,
up the hill
but-
from that, but yes.
I mean, and I'm looking at what they've done up the street, and then I'm looking across the street where it's still natural and beautiful, and there's big limestone. Like, are they gonna just clear cut that too?
No,
Do we know?
Jerry knows
No?
about what
Okay.
the drainage plan is for that area, if that's what you want to hear about.
Okay,
Guys,
'cause,
can't-
I mean,
can't-
it's,
You can't bring that up.
you gotta go.
It's not on the agenda.
All right.
oh, sorry.
I don't,
Okay.
I'm going to ask that we table this again, all right? I don't
Second,
think,
second the motion.
Yeah.
All in favor?
all right, all right.
I make a
All right,
motion
it
to
looks
adjourn.
like we did not make it to our last meeting. So, but I do think we are getting there. I appreciate, all the good work you guys
So
are
I
doing.
make a motion that we adjourn.
I second.
Third,
All right, all in favor? Aye.
vote with your feet.
Adjourn this